The Guardians, episode 18? Like, oh my god. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to episode 18 of The Guardians. And before I go any further, let me just say that, any and all reactions you see from the co-hosts are real because nobody knows what I'm going to say until I say it. So I don't even really know until 5 minutes beforehand. I put it in a little notepad. But anyways, episode 18, we have a lot that we're going to cover. We probably won't do competitive results just because there's so much we have to cover, but we are going to cover esports news. So don't fret too much. But anyways, onward with introductions. One Eye, we usually stream 4-5 days a week. This week it's been kind of sporadic. You had stuff you were doing. What's going on with you? How's your week been?
My week's been pretty good. Finally getting my desktop repaired, which is pretty nice. But besides that, just playing Overwatch with you and spending a little time with my Game Boy while I'm out running errands. Nothing too fancy, nothing too exciting to report, unfortunately.
Game Boy's exciting enough. I saw you playing it before the show started. I got a little jealous because I don't have mine anymore. But hey, whatever. Conchu, man, how's your week been? How's the streaming been going? What's new with you?
You know what? It's been crazy. I between doing video on demand, behind the scenes, and then streaming, I literally had no idea. Like yesterday, we had a question pop up in our chat. I had literally no idea what day it was because between the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I'm either streaming or doing videos to help stack up for July. So it's been busy but fun.
Very nice. Yeah, I know you're gonna take a month off and go spend some time with your kids. That sabbatical from work, yeah.
Yeah. So a whole month off, but my channel does not take a single day break. So
yeah, it's very good to hear. And just for the record, we won't miss you. No, I'm kidding, man. You enjoy that time with your kids. And Tifa is back this week. We had Jamerson last week as our special guest, and Tifa is back with us. How's your week been? I heard rumblings about you moving to a new place. You and your significant other.
Oh yes, actually he didn't move in with me. He was moving out from Santa Barbara because he just graduated college. So I had to help him with that 2 weekends ago, and then I had to deal with my moving this weekend. And it's a pretty eclectic household, I would say. We have Megan, also known as Eskimo Kisses. She's like a really popular League of Legends streamer. She's one of my roommates. And then we also have Rakib, who's a really popular YouTuber, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I have one of my teammates from Gale Force, Overwatch Pro, also living with us.
Nice.
So it's a pretty good group of people. But yeah, I've been super busy doing all of my esports arena and Gale Force duties, and on top of that, trying to move in. So it's been a crazy week for me, but it's been fun.
Well, good. That's good to hear. And it's always kind of stressful moving. I know I've moved quite a bit in my life, and luckily we've lived in the same house for the last 3.5 years, so I can kind of either be really happy that we haven't moved or really nervous because it means we might be moving soon. So we'll see. I mean, employment might present itself elsewhere, and we might have to move. But well, it's good that you are nice and settled, and it's good to have you back on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so without further ado, like I said, we have a lot that was announced this week in the world of Overwatch, and we're going to get into the blue posts. We're going to get into our thoughts. One thing that we will say is that the public test realm for Overwatch did kick off. There were some changes, some updates, some modes that were added to it, and we've all had a lot of exposure to that, and we are going to cover that. But before we get into that, there were some esports news. Like I said, no competitive results, but there were some more announcements that came out. One of which was yesterday. It was either yesterday or this morning. I don't remember when it was. My hours all kind of bleed together. But FaZe Clan, which was a big name in Call of Duty. They also picked up a team earlier this year in January for Counter-Strike, CSGO. They just announced that they are picking up an Overwatch team. And that team, the team captain is Clamp, and it also has Fraud, which a lot of people who are big into FPS know. Fraud is a big name in the FPS realm. And then Wonderfuls and Mendu Kosai Mendokusai. I always rip his name up. Former IDDQD fragger. Big name in the Overwatch scene, as new as it is. Venless, and then Evoke, which Evoke has been around a lot. And I think he's been on a team or two. Tifa might know more about that, but it's a really familiar name. I know he's in a lot of Seagull streams. But so that is FaZe's new lineup. Thoughts on just seeing that name on paper? They are going to be competing almost immediately. The Josh OG Invitational is this weekend, and they're going to be competing in that against the likes of Liquid, C9, Envious, Luminosity, and Gale Force. How do you think they're going to do? Like, are they just going to come together and just start like destroying people? Is it just going to be kind of like a novelty thing? What do you guys think of this this announcement?
Yeah, it's really interesting because this team has never played. We've never seen them in a tournament just yet. My team, Gale Force, has scrimmed them, so I've seen them in action already, and just I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't want to, I don't want to bash on them or anything. But and this was also back when Brax was on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't seen that team since I think they switched out. It was either Vineless, I think it was Vineless that they replaced for Brax. But it's the Overwatch competitive scene is kind of in a weird place right now, where the top 10 teams are so far above the 11th team or the 12th team, and there's just this huge gap, and then there's another gap between the first team and the second team, or I mean not the first and second, between the top 2 teams, which are Envious and Cloud9, and the rest of the top 10. So I kind of have the feeling that they're maybe on the lower end of maybe top 10 right now, maybe not even, but we'll have to see, because maybe they'll surprise us in the OG tournament.
Yeah, they very well might. Conchu, I know you follow FaZe a lot in other titles. How do you think this lineup is going to do against the likes of like Envious, Cloud9, Gale Force?
Honestly, one of the early comments I made when they mentioned esports, I said it's going to take a lot of attention in the world once FaZe decides to roll over. And then I certainly, like literally the second I saw it, I was like sending it to all my friends, like, it's happening, with the little "it's happening" gif. And I says, and not because any other teams are less important. I know that FaZe Clan has a huge following in so many different realms that they bring a lot of passion to it, just from their fans alone. And that's not even their trolling fans. That's just the general fans by themselves. So I think it's really cool to see new blood coming in and really seeing how it shakes up the top 10.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in a couple of those names we've seen before, like Mendokusai was on IDDQD. Yeah. We covered them extensively before they were picked up. And I mean, it's got some promise, but you really have to be able to play together for an extended period of time before you can really start to gel. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do. Admittedly, my interaction with FaZe Clan is most of their fanboys coming into chats and just spamming, FaZe Clan, and you have the imposter YouTube accounts that show up. So I mean, I don't really know much about them other than, they are in Counter-Strike, they are in Call of Duty. They did have some promising results in Call of Duty. I believe Ghosts and then Black Ops 3 were their big titles that they really did some damage in. But it's exciting to see more big organizations taking the leap into Overwatch. So look for them this weekend, the Josh OG Invitational. That is going to be going on. Like we said, FaZe will be competing against Cloud9, Liquid, Envious, Luminosity, Gale Force, Splice, and then Northern Gaming Red. So those 8 teams will be competing for $25,000 in prize pools. And then also this week, One Nation of Gamers Operation Breakout will be continuing again tomorrow and Sunday, so make sure you go check that out. There have been some good promising results so far, and I believe there's only 3 or 4 teams left. All the rest have been knocked out. So check into that. So that is the esports that's going on this weekend. In addition to Ghost 2 Gamers Weekly, you have the EU and the NA. It goes on every week. There's a lot of exciting coverage. Hexagrams and ZPs usually cover the mainstream. And then you have Josh, Ask Joshy, and usually a revolving door of other streamers, really promising talent that cast with him. Fish Sticks is one of them that you've heard his name. So make sure you guys check that stuff out. Now, moving on to the other side of Overwatch, Blizzard came out and said in the microtransactions of being able to purchase loot boxes, Overwatch has made so far to date $239 million. And we like to joke that about $180 million of that came from me and my splurge at the beginning of the first week of Overwatch being launched. But yeah, you're talking about $239 million, right? That's more than the gross domestic product of 5 nations on the earth. Like, people went out and spent more money than the Marshall Islands, than some of these Caribbean, like these entire countries have spent less in their gross domestic product than people paid for in loot boxes in Overwatch the first month it's been out. I mean, that people are really excited about this microtransaction system and the fact that it doesn't affect the game. Like, it just makes you look prettier. Like, it lets you have better sprays. I mean, that's a lot of money, guys, isn't it?
Gotta get those skins.
Yeah.
Yeah, those skins are game changing.
Yeah. I mean,
I always feel like the team with the more skins and better skins wins. So.
League of Legends has taught us anything. It's have skins get wins, right?
Exactly.
It's funny because I have like a drug addict track record with microtransactions, and for some reason, with the exception of the one batch that I did on day one, because I was like, hey, I played in the beta for like 6 months. I'll give you an extra $40. That's fine. That's okay. You know what I mean? Besides that one splurge, I haven't felt the need to at all. Like, dear God, keep you away from the Dota and the League of Legends marketplace, but for some reason I can resist the temptation with Overwatch.
yeah, and I think it's just because you level up so much and so often. And even with the promotion system where the XP resets at level 101 back to level 1, you know, you get a ton of loot boxes. And Overwatch is the type of game where you just want to play and play and play. So naturally you're going to level up by doing so. But the enticement of being able to buy loot boxes in bulk is very appealing. I know some of us are able to resist that urge, and some of us are not. Me, but you know, having those skins it's kind of an added benefit of being able to buy those loot boxes. I mean, it doesn't actually improve your skill, but it improves the way you die. You look a lot more appealing when you die if you have a skin. You know, or a spray.
I mean, at this point, amazing has become a meme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, I see it in text from people that I don't even play Overwatch with. Like, so, I mean, there's definitely a lot of people enjoying the cosmetics, and I think it's fairly understandable.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a lot of money. And then there was a release, so to speak, the PTR, the public test realm, came up and it was up and running for Overwatch as of Tuesday. What came along with that is competitive play was brought back. Now, for those of us who played in closed beta know that the system I absolutely hated. Like, I tried it, I played maybe 6 games, I couldn't stand it. I know Khonshu he was grinding out game after game on competitive, just because any competitive mode he is definitely down for. But the new system, where you don't start at the bottom, and it's not really a reward based on time spent, it's more based on skill, we were able to get our hands on it and kind of see some of the differences and what Blizzard's thought pattern was on how they were going to approach competitive play in Overwatch. Since it is not a MOBA, it's not WoW Arenas, it's not StarCraft, you know, it's a 6-on-6 first-person shooter. So how are you going to approach this, especially having maps with 4 modes? Now, before I give my thoughts on that, what are your guys' initial thoughts on the new kind of revamped competitive play? I know that there's still problems with it. There's a lot of posts out there saying, you know, this is what's bad, this is what's bad. But what are your thoughts on it? Like, how do you feel Blizzard has done in morphing their competitive play from where it was at in the closed beta to where it is now on the PTR?
Oh wow. I think it's definitely more towards a more realistic approach to competitiveness. Before it kind of was just seemed like it was a shotgun approach. Like, yeah, you guys are kind of whatever. You guys just go play. Now it's like, okay, you over there, and then they have a bunch of different pieces of data that they get together and they say you guys are all equally on the same chart as far as being able to play. Now they've mentioned in a blue post that we'll talk about, how they face certain challenges, but I've been in many matches where you can start to see, yeah, everybody here is battling it out really well. Everybody's of comparable skill, comparable ping. I think I maybe had 2 people say, why am I coming in from Singapore just to play on PTR with you? One, I think the PTR is only in the US, so I think that might have helped. But I noticed a lot more people were just actively playing, actively engaged. There wasn't a lot of drops except for more towards the evening, and I don't know if that's just because more people were getting on. But I think around the whole thing, everybody was along the same talent line. It was definitely a lot more engaging. It looked prettier. I'm going to be the one that says aesthetics matters too. The game, when it comes up, has a different look and feel versus normal play. Right away when you look at it, who's grouped up. Like, nothing more frustrating than going, I am a solo player with 6 or 5 other solo players, and I think everybody else is solo players. And no, it's a pre-made 6 just sitting there waiting to just bulldoze you down. Now you can actually see, like, on the teams, oh, wow, it's not a pre-made, or it's 3 and 3. Stuff like that really kind of makes you feel a little bit better at the end of the day.
I definitely want to echo kind of what you're saying about the UI, because it wasn't something I'd really thought about. Like, visuals are not necessarily a thing that's super important to me, because like I play so many retro games and I work in the industry and things like that. But that UI, when you're loading in like red team versus blue team and like the little spot on the ground when you're pushing payload, like, it really, really does feel so good. Vastly improved over the beta. One other thing I would like to say is that I actually do really like the system as far as points are concerned and how they're running it. There are issues with sudden death, and I'm sure that's something Veritech's going to want to talk about a little bit more, so I'll leave it. But as far as like generally how it works, I'm actually really happy with it. My only issue is that I can only play it on the PTR right now. And I understand playing for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. My issues with PTRs, and I've had this unanimously across any PTR I've ever played on, is that it is just filled with trolls and rage lords, and so like, one thing I like about Overwatch is it is pretty rare that I find somebody who's salty, you know what I mean? And with the exception of one, literally every single game of competitive I played had either a rager, a rage quitter, or both. But I'm mocking that up entirely to the fact that it's PTR and not the system. Because the system feels infinitely better than it did in beta. Like, I could understand people leaving in beta because it just sucks. You have like a minute left, you're winning on a control point, somebody leaves and you're down 4v5. That's no fun, but it doesn't feel like that anymore. So I actually really do like how it plays. I'm very excited for it to hit live and get off of super toxic PTR.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can mirror that as like the toxic people that I ran into. It's really cool how the community is very awkward in the sense versus other FPSs where there are those people that just went full rage mode. You'll see a whole team drop. We had one instance in PTR where we had full team of 6. We're all communicating, absolutely obliterated the other team about halfway through. All but one drops, and there's just one lonely May just standing out there, standing on the top. You can see from the distance, like, I'm not even going to try, guys. So the whole team just, we didn't even say anything. We just walked up to the May, and we're just waving to the May. And it turned out to be just like this silly, fun moment that, like, everybody understands that moment when the entire team drops. And it turned out, we won anyways because we had the point, but I like that people are generally, not like GG easy, this poor one single player. It was like, oh, we get it. We're going to walk through it, but, we're here with you. And nobody shot each other for a good minute and a half, which was nice. I'd actually like to hear how much. I'm waiting for a headset to go back on. Tifa, what did you think of the PTR?
It was interesting. It seems like Blizzard, I feel, is very stubborn about certain things.
Yes.
And which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I do like the changes that they made on like the certain maps, like the assault maps. How they managed to lower the winning so many times on attack. The sudden death doesn't even work, but they did make a blue post about it this week about basically all the feedback that the community had about the PTR and stuff. And I think after reading their response, Jeff Kaplan's response, it makes me feel a lot better about the direction. Pretty much, it's like I feel like he addressed all of the concerns pretty much, and he like really has a good understanding of how we feel in general about it. And I love like the little where he has like in his blue post he has, here's our short term plan, and here's our long term plan, and both are really good changes. I feel like.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I didn't necessarily have a problem with. People have been having real issues on the PTR. Okay, so pretty much people in closed beta know it was essentially the same game between quick play and competitive play. You had the same modes, you had the same maps. It was just you took competitive a little bit more serious. Everyone started at the bottom on Challenger rank 5, and then you just kind of grinded out games until you hit a certain level. The top 100 people in closed beta hit that heroic, that top level. They changed that, so now you have to play 10 placement matches. At the conclusion of your 10 placement matches, you were assigned a skill rating from 1 to 100. Like, for example, I did mine on the PTR as one I said. I went 3 and 7 in my 10 placements because in 6 of those games we had troll comps. So, you know, it's whatever. I didn't take it super seriously. I was more focused on, getting through my placements to see how competitive was going to be. So I went 3 and 7. I had a skill rating of 44. I had someone else with me for all 10 matches. We finished them and he had a skill rating of 39. Someone else was with us, he had a skill rating of 40. So it takes into account more than just wins losses, which is nice. And it gives you now, alright, so not everyone starts at the same point, which is another positive. Those who are better, won't have to play against people who they can just wipe their noses with, on the way to higher rankings. We're all going to be segregated to where we belong, and then you can climb or fall from there. Assault maps, or I guess King of the Hill maps, are now best of 5. So you will be playing, if you go the full round to 5 rounds, you will be playing 2 points twice on every map because there are 3 points on every King of the Hill map, which I really liked because it kind of gives the team that can't really get their stuff together the first 2 rounds, if they go down 0-2, they can still come back and win their match, which is really nice because there was a team that actually did that against the team I was on in competitive. They lost the first 2 rounds, and we're thinking, okay, awesome, we just got that in the bag. We're calling GG. It goes to round 3, and we're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, this is just a technicality. They win round 3, and it goes to round 4, and we're like, oh, crap, it's not best of 3 anymore. So they ended up coming back and winning 3-2, which is nice, which also is nice because there's no sudden death on King of the Hill. A team has to win. And one thing that people were having problems with centered a lot around payload maps. And payload maps are changed now to where if you attack the point, or on the hybrid maps, if you capture it, like on King's Row, you get a point. If you push it to that first checkpoint, you get a second point. The third checkpoint, you get a third point. And then if you finish, you get your 4th point. So you can end up 4-0 on the enemy team. The enemy team then has to do the exact same thing. Now, if neither team finishes pushing the payload, it takes how many checkpoints you got, and then the distance pushed to the next checkpoint. And that's where the defending team then has to attack to. And it has this nice little hashed yellow mark so that the defending team knows, okay, well, that's where we pushed it to. Well, that's where the match ends if we cannot stop them. And it's really nice. What people have a problem with is sudden death. If both teams push, well, now you go into sudden death, and it's a coin flip over who gets to attack and who gets to defend. And it's the same on the assault style maps. Now, the assault style map they're different now because you have a point or a time bank left. So, like on Volskaya, for example, you capture both points, you get 2 points. You do it with 2 minutes and 24 seconds remaining, you now have 2 minutes and 24 seconds of your time bank. Team 2 captures both points. They have 2 minutes and 3 seconds remaining. They now have 2 minutes and 3 seconds left on their time bank, and it goes to round 3, which the attacking team from round 1 now gets to attack. With that 2 minutes and 24 seconds left, they capture the point, it goes to round 4, and it goes all the way down until one team can't capture or until the time runs out. And if that happens, it goes to sudden death, and again, it's a coin flip. one team's attacking, one team's defending, and people are crying foul because it gives an unfair advantage at higher skill levels where the attacking team usually wins about 70-75% of the time they're able to attack. And as Tifa said, Jeff Kaplan came out and kind of addressed that and said, yeah, we're looking into that. It's a lot better than it used to be. It felt like it was 50%. It was going into sudden death in the closed beta. It was actually more like 35%. And he broke it down and said, on payload maps, it almost never goes to sudden death. On King of the Hill maps, it doesn't go to sudden death. On payload maps, it was like 9%, so it wasn't happening that often. He said assault maps, attack defend maps, those are really kind of where you were having the issue. He said it's still only about 19-20%, but it's still a little too high for our liking, so we're really looking about how we can fix that for you. And it was broken down in the Blue Post. I had a chance to read it earlier this week. I didn't go back and revisit it today because I was really busy setting up some Overwatch stuff for my local competitive scene. But I mean, it really, Jeff Kaplan has communicated more during the closed beta and in this first month than probably any other Blizzard game. They're not really known for their communication, so people are going, "Oh crap! Like he's actually talking to us." And if someone else wants to jump in and kind of go over what was said in the Blue Post, that way I'm not rambling for 20 minutes, and just kind of outline what he said. But there was a lot of good information in that post. So, I mean,
go ahead. Okay, so it was so what did he say? He said basically he found that on payload and hybrid maps especially, the percentage of going to a sudden death was still too high. I think for hybrid maps it was around 29 to 30% or something, and then for payload it was a little bit less than that, like 20%. And he said it's still too high, and they want to bring it down to 9%, like how it is for the assault maps. And then he proposed like a series of different ways to kind of help that, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head right now. Do you guys remember?
Well, we have the list here in the show notes. So it looks like the most basic level matchmaking is trying to find you and 11 people to play with, but it has a lot of factors to take in. The first factor is time. Matchmaking team tries to balance the time limit between long enough and to find an even match. Taking long enough, people complain, also too short and you won't find a better match, things like that. So it looks like a lot of talking about how matchmaking prioritizes MMR is a big thing that they're looking at in terms of rank 2.
I think the biggest thing that he highlighted, which I mentioned before with the challenges that they face, a lot of people complaining, and I try to explain it to them, is we have such odd behaviors as gamers, and we do different things, and some of the mechanics of the game itself bites it. For example, the pro players, right? They're off doing scrims, and they're off playing custom matches galore. Now, you may look at them and they go, oh, well, hey, they're just a level 23 when they quick play, and that's all the statistics. Yeah, but until you find out they've got well over 200 games in a custom game, and they come rolling in as a 23 and end up curb stomping every other person they run across, that's a very hard number to just magically have in their pocket. Or let's say for whatever reason, somebody wants to hide out. Maybe Seagull wants to hide on the internet and just play under his Smurf account. There's no way to gauge his skill until he's played several games. There's times when I play solo. And does that measure my skill because we're getting a lot of loss ratios because the full team isn't working together? Those are all huge challenges that I was so glad he was able to just set out on paper or on the forums to say, hey, these are real challenges. We don't have an immediate answer to these.
Yeah.
Another one that he brought up that I thought was good too is take, for an example, a competitive player or a casual player, both apply. How do you determine their placement across all of the heroes? You know what I mean? Take me, for example. I've played the game, I did 6 months in beta. I've been playing it since it came out, right? And literally, if you look at my stats, I have not touched Widowmaker. I have not touched Hanzo. I have not touched McCree. Literally 0 time on the players. But on the other hand, I have hours on Torb, hours on Reinhardt, you know what I mean? So being able to accurately define a placement rating based on so many different skill levels across so many different characters is another really difficult thing for them to try to tackle as well.
Yeah.
So the blue post that I was referring to, so that post in particular was all about matchmaking. It had some really good insight about how their thought process and stuff. But Jeff did make another blue post, which was the one that I was referring to, about basically the coin flip aspect of the sudden death, which I think a lot of people were frustrated with, because more often than not, if you were on attack, you won. And that was decided, randomly. But one of the things that he did say about that was really interesting was he wants to eventually get rid of the sudden death altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And then he laid out some short-term plans and long-term plans. The short-term plans were kind of like basically the gist of it was reducing the time that allowed for teams to attack. So the matches in general would be shorter, and also it would make it less likely for both teams to fully complete a map on attack. So that would help, one. That was the short-term kind of fix. And the long-term fix was basically they wanted to have a time bank system, which if you did complete a map fully, it would remember how much time left was on the clock. And then and this is if both teams complete it. So each team has a amount of time on the clock left. And then in sudden death, what would happen would be they would have only that amount of time on the clock left. So I think it's a really good compromise versus like stopwatch or something like that, because you still get to play to the end of each map, but it still takes into account time in a kind of like interesting and creative way.
Yeah.
Personally, I think between the two options, I like the first one more. And the reasoning why is I think a lot of the reason why people don't like sudden death is the way it stands right now is because it does offer a pretty strong bias. It doesn't really feel fair, right? So if we take the first option where instead of using a time bank where one team will have more time than necessarily the other team, which I will admit is completely valid because the time they get is based off of skill, it's still a good system. It's just if all of a sudden you started rounds where it was like 4 minutes to attack, if both teams won 3 minutes to attack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
While it would take longer and potentially lead to more games, I feel like that is a more fair system, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think there's a weird awkwardness between people want to know what is truly fair and the expectation of how long a match should last. Think, I've got a night, I've got an hour tonight, let's play, and we're going to compete through, 6 or 7 matches. And you may, in order to determine if a match is legit, it may take 6 rounds just to get it done.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this like magical expectation that matches should be short.
Yeah, and matches are already shorter in Overwatch. I mean, in the competitive side, when I was doing my placements, I did happen to notice that there were some times where matches would drag on a little bit, but it was just because the teams were evenly matched. So it was really hard to come up with a distinctive winner. Like, especially in King of the Hill, it would sit at 99-99 in overtime for a good 2 or 3 minutes because teams were just constantly going back and forth. And the expectation that matches have to be shorter, then just do quick play or just play the brawl. I mean, the weekly brawl changes this week is overly defensive. I mean, that one I've played 3 times, and I think the longest it's lasted was like 3.5-4 minutes, because there are certain modes that are set up to not necessarily be short, and one of them is the competitive mode. And they did come out and say that they're looking at shortening, and they might have already done so with a hotfix on the PTR, shortening the amount of time that a team has to capture a point. Right now it's defaulted to 2 minutes, and they were looking at shortening it to 1 minute and 45 seconds in sudden death. That way the attacking team has less time to capture that point. So they are toying around with ideas to kind of eliminate it, as Tifa said, eliminate it down the road, because it's something that really needs to be a last resort, and a lot of people still are feeling like it gives an unfair advantage to the attacking team. And I don't know what the ratios are like now. I know back during closed beta, near the end of closed beta, they published some numbers that said that it was about 30% of the time at the lowest MMR levels, the attacking team would win. Usually the defending team was able to stop the teams, and then as you get up, progress in skill level, I think it was almost 80%, like at the top tier of the game, the attacking team was winning. So, I mean, if you average that out 30 to 80, it's close to about 50% across the board, but there's still some disparity, and I can kind of see where the frustrations lie in the system and why there needs to be some changes, but it's a whole lot better than it used to be. I mean, running through competitive, my biggest beef is that it felt very unbalanced. For example, I did my placements. I got placed at a certain level. My next 2 games, I didn't have anybody to play with, so I just played by myself. I lost those 2 games. I lost 2 entire skill ratings. I went back and I won my next 2 games and gained about 15% of a skill rating level, and then lost my 5th game and lost half a skill rating level. And it's like, what the heck? And they have this nice system where they show everybody's skill rating, and then they show the average team skill rating. And in all 5 games, my team had the lower skill rating, so we then had this nice little underdog tag at the very top of our team that labeled us as the underdog. So had we won, we would have won more, and had we lost, we would have lost less in terms of skill rating. Yet, I lost 2 skill entire levels in 3 losses, almost 3 levels, but I only gained about a 5th of a level with my 2 wins. So I don't know if that was just because I'm really bad or my team is really bad, but it feels kind of wonky on the competitive side with how they assign skill rating and how you climb and how you go down. And I can see how, coupled with sudden death, how it would kind of feel a little bit lopsided against the defending team. But you know, they are working on it, and hopefully they come up with something that will at least make 2/3 of the population happy, since you can't make everybody happy. So, you know, I don't know. They're constantly working behind the scenes, and they're putting out at least 1 blue post every week addressing our concerns. You know, another... Go ahead.
I do feel that a lot of the reason, you know, obviously people want to play ranked because they want to see their skill rating go up and stuff like that, and be compared to other players. But another interesting thing that I think makes competitive mode really, really a hot topic right now is so ESL just announced their rules for their 100K tournament in Cologne in August. And it's very clear just by reading it that they're trying their hardest to please Blizzard. And so a lot of the esports scene right now has 1 hero limit and stopwatch rules, right? Mm-hmm. And ESL is doing something completely different. Not only is it hero stacking is allowed, but on top of that, there's no banning of maps. So every single week they have 4 maps to play, period, and they're gonna go through every single map. So this is clearly, I feel, a move by Blizzard, because of course, basically I feel that ESL is trying to prove to Blizzard that they can run a successful tournament the way that Blizzard wants to, so that they could lock down a contract with them to produce all of their big Blizzard Blizzard tournaments, basically coming up in the next few years. But yeah, it's pretty clear to me that like Blizzard was behind a lot of the decision of the rules, and they did also say that they're basically going with Blizzard's competitive ranked mode for how they're scoring the maps and stuff, with a slight twist. So they're going back to kind of like the beta mode of it, where the tiebreakers were decided on a control point, because I think they don't have enough time to really flesh out Blizzard's, you know, of what their plans are for ranked coming up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's really interesting because this is of course has everything to do with the rank system and how Blizzard wants their tournaments to coincide with the rank system and kind of be the same kind of flavor, and not have this weird stopwatch rules and like one hero limit that like the community kind of like decided that was better for the competitive scene. And to say very frankly, a lot of the competitive players right now are very upset.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hmm.
I mean, and I actually sat back and thought, because, they came out and said, eventually we want to do away with sudden death. And, the community has spoken, and stopwatch really isn't popular, which is probably why we're seeing this pseudo-hybrid control point / distance traveled. They're testing stuff out. I know at a competitive level that there is a lot of opinions on what the quote-unquote official rules need to be, and I know Conchu and I have had many discussions on hero stacking and limiting heroes.
Oh God, we all got into it a little bit.
I mean, it's just like just constant issues with how to perfect it. And so I sat back one day. It was a slow night at work, and I'm like, how can Blizzard do this so that they can have official tournament rules? Because in the past, at least their past couple titles, they've sat back and let the community build it, and then go, okay, well, we like that. This is going to be official. We're going to do that, and this is what we're going to do. With Overwatch, it's hard to find that perfect balance without killing the spirit of what is Overwatch. Even at the most basic level, even at the most competitive level, how can you break this down to kind of make it a little bit more fair for every team, a little bit more exciting for people to play in and spectate matches, without killing the essence and the spirit of the game? And I really couldn't come up with really anything. I'm like, how are they going to do this to please the majority of players? Because it just seems like right now, some tournaments do stopwatch. Some tournaments do stopwatch and hero limits. Esports Arena had their own system that so far I think has been the best one. But again, it still kind of bothered some people that they didn't do, one hero limit per team. It's like, what rules can you come up with? What rules can Blizzard come out and say, okay, this is our game and we love it, but this is what we're going to institute, for competitive, for esports, without people crying foul and going, yeah, but that's not what Overwatch is about. I know in our discussions, we've talked about the 5 Tracers and 1 Lucio. We've talked about the 5 Winstons and 1 Lucio, and how Conchu vehemently disagrees with that equaling anything more than just simple cheese. And some of us think well, that's just adaptation. But at the core, the discussions we have, that equals Overwatch. Being able to do any and all of that, that's Overwatch. So how you can translate that into an official rule set, how you can take and tweak the game without really kind of killing the spirit of Overwatch. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if you guys have any ideas or what, but it's just baffling. You have this game that everybody loves, but nobody really knows how to fix to kind of make it more fair and more appealing to the masses.
So I think ultimately, my opinion aside on that, Blizzard has one really big question on their mind, and I think that it comes down to competitive mode is kind of its own little piece of the pie, and should they be appeasing the entire community, or should they be appeasing those people who are professionally competing and professionally engaging this? What are the top 15 teams saying? What are the top 10 teams saying? They should be listening to those. Those are the guys who are going to be in the dirt playing the game. They are part of that small, I don't know, not necessarily call it a small piece of pie, but of the piece of the pie that is actually engaged in this type of play. You can have your cheese comps and whatever on the normal game, and you can appease everybody on the normal game. But when it comes to competitive, you really have a niche group of people who that's directly going to impact. So they have a question on their hand. Who do they want to please? They want to please everybody, or please the people who are going to be actually engaging in that competition?
Yeah.
And even then, I don't think there's any right answer. Like, I know this is what our discussion kind of boiled down to, too. Yeah. But, between, professional and casual players, everybody's going to be in each camp. There are going to be people who see multi-hero comps as, just cheesy and trying to cheat out a win. And there are going to be people like me who think that, multi-hero comps, while being really niche and just not necessarily the best, absolutely have their place in the game. And I think the reason why there's no definitive right answer to it is because of what Overwatch is designed to be. It's designed to be this game that is very fluid, that is supposed to have mirror heroes and things like that. So you can't really lock it down. If we look at let's look at Heroes of the Storm. when they started testing out competitive in that. Me and Veritech were both involved in the game really deeply at that point in time. And, they're like, well, how are we going to do picks and bans? How many bans are we going to do? And that was a lot easier because there's a definitive right answer there. Because each team's only getting one hero. The hero pool is X size. There, boom, this is the number. Any more, it's too much. Any less, it doesn't work. Easy, done, fix it. But you can't do that with Overwatch. You can't instate like a hero ban. Like, it kills the entire spirit and point of the game. So there's no real right answer. You can't make everyone happy. I don't even think you could make half the population happy. Like,
yeah, that's very true.
Because it's not quantifiable. It's not like tangible. There's no like empirical answer. There's no data. You know what I mean? Like, it's all opinion and conjecture. So I think what scares Blizzard and why they've been kind of hush-hush about it and haven't really said anything is at some point they're going to have to take a stand. At some point they're going to have to go, no, this is how the game is designed to be played. And I honestly think they're just getting a little nervous about it because either way, a lot of people are going to be very unhappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, go ahead, Tifa.
You go ahead.
I think ultimately, I would love to see, because it is so diverse, is allowing these esport organizations that host these tournaments to really kind of make up their own rules. Let Blizzard kind of actually say, you know what, it's no longer our game; it is your game. And in a sense that, hey, like for example, esports tournament, you have your own set of rules. You host your tournaments based on those, as long as our game doesn't actually interfere with those rules. ESL, you have your own rules. You play by your rules. The ultimate problem comes down when they have the world championship. Whose rules are they going to play by, right?
Right.
So it's a hard one. I don't think anybody, like you said, I don't think anybody has an answer for this one.
Like, there really just isn't one. That's when, like, even with our discussion, like, there's a point where I was like, there's just no right answer. Like, nobody's wrong. Just nobody's right. Like, it's just a thing.
Yep.
I think the main complaint right now among the professional players is, regardless of what is better, at this point they have to scrim and practice two different basically games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's really difficult because now they have to decide, okay, well, there's this 100K tournament that has no hero limit, which changes everything, right? And then they have all these like smaller tournaments for like 25K that have a hero limit, and it's really not optimal to try to be good at both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, regardless of who's right and who's wrong or which system is better, it's just having these two very different systems is kind of hurting the players in general.
Yeah.
Especially from like an organization standpoint. Like, pretend you're a manager of Cloud9, right? So there's a slew of like 3 or 4 small-time tournaments coming up in the one big 100K. You only have X amount of time to devote your team's practice to. So like, which one do you pick? So I think the competitive scene is really where people are getting screwed on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Casual players doesn't matter, but I think competitive is just like, well, what do we do?
Yep. I'm going to agree with everything you said because I wasn't listening past pretend you're the manager of Cloud9. I was like, okay, sure.
And gone.
Yeah, and gone. But yeah, I mean, and really that is kind of where the spirit of Overwatch lies. And that's kind of why personally I'm against having hero limits, just because, at the very core of the game, you'll naturally have people who will come in and they'll be playing solo queue, or you'll have, your one buddy, so you're 2 out of the 6. And you're like, all right, well, there's already a Reaper picked, I'm not going to go Reaper. So you naturally kind of limit yourself. Or you have on the other side, early on in the competitive meta, you saw nothing but double Lucio, double Reaper, double Winston, or double Zenyatta, double Genji. It's like, yeah, that's really boring to watch because there's no, creativity. But at the other end of it, sometimes 5 Tracers and a Lucio works. Like, sometimes you're just like, oh, you locked in Tracer, well, I was going to play Tracer, or these other 2 people are, okay, screw it, we're going to go with this, let's just cheese them. And it works because you can't hit those Tracers with the Lucio. I feel like having that ability to run that, in a competitive, in an official setting, there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, yes, some teams will be like, all right, we're going to cheese these people. All right, we're going to run, X number of Bastions and some Reinhardts and Mercies to damage boost. if it works, cool. I mean, the other team then couldn't adapt. And with Overwatch, it's all about adaptation, adapting to what your opponent is throwing at you, which is why they allow hero switching so frequently. I mean, you can just stand in your spawn and just hero switch. I know that there's a quote-unquote strat with D.Va where she loses her mech and she's close to her spawn. She can just run in, H, pick her hero again, and she's back in her mech. Like, the ability to change on the fly like that and not have any limits, that's kind of, to me, what Overwatch is. And, to kind of echo what Tifa said, if you have all of these tournaments then that are limiting what teams can do, now they can't just practice and scrim. Now they have to worry about, okay, well, this is coming up. We have to do it this way. Okay, well, then this is going to come up 2 weeks after, and their rules are completely different, so now we have to practice this way. And you never really get kind of that cohesion and that ability just to sit down and go, we're going to become the best at this game. It turns into, well, we're going to become the best at this tournament, and then we have to hurry up and change because we have to become the best at this tournament, that the rules aren't the same. So when Blizzard comes out and makes their official rules, it'll be really interesting on what they decide. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Tifa's onto something with what ESL is doing right now.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, in the article where they published all the rules and stuff, they explicitly said something along the lines of Blizzard feels that hero stacking is a core part of Overwatch as a game. It's a core mechanic, and ESL went right ahead and said we agree with that. So that's how our tournament is gonna be. There's gonna be hero stacking. So like I feel like even just that sentence in itself shows that Blizzard is like pulling some of the strings behind that tournament in particular. Yeah, so it's gonna be very interesting moving forward once like Blizzard has a Blizzard tournament and not this like here's ESL's tournament, but we're kind of helping out with it,
Yeah. Yep. And
I think a big part of it with public perception too is this whole concept that like it's even happened in this chat too, that hero stacking is inherently cheese. Because like I come from a MOBA background, I've done StarCraft 2 ladder, I've done all that. And when I think of like what a clear cheese is, I think like the epitome, the best example you can have of a cheese is Pylon
Cannon Rush, yeah.
Cannon Rush. And the reason why I feel like that's the best example of a cheese is because it's a strategy that if you know what's going on and you've seen it is incredibly weak, but like if you don't, it just wins you the game. Like if somebody doesn't properly scout, if somebody misses that one, builder going in and builds the turrets, you're just done, game over. And the reason why I don't inherently feel like hero stacking is cheese necessarily is like, let's take Heroes Rising, for example, right? We saw a few teams a few times pull out 5 Tracer, 1 Lucio. And in my head, it seems much more like the Hail Mary play in football than it does as necessarily cheese. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not like you don't see teams in a tournament where you allow hero stacking doing just hero stacking because it's not necessarily the best strategy. And I think most of the time it's honestly worse. Like, for example, I know I even mentioned this in our discussion, the 5 Tracer, 1 Lucio comp is horrendous at any kind of defense.
Yeah.
Is not really good at King of the Hill. It's like good at payload. And even then, like, it can get stopped pretty easily. So I feel like that's where a lot of this core argument is. There's some people who feel like it's inherently unfair, and there's some people who just don't really care.
Yeah. And that's where my point has always been, because if you could limit heroes, hero stacking, fine, cool, whatever. But there's nothing like seeing a player's face when they're like sitting on Hollywood, like, all right, well, we're going to defense. What's the enemy team going to be like? And all of a sudden you see 6 Winstons jump over the wall. You're like, oh shit, how are we going to counter this? And that's where the skill comes in. Like, how do you counter 6 Winstons? If they're able to do it, then they're able to stop them, and then now the team has to pick something other than 6 Winstons. If they're not, well, congratulations, your cheese just won. And in terms of Overwatch, cheese equals skill. Unless you're a Winston main, then you don't even need to aim. You just need to press left click and turn. Like,
but I remember that remark. Thank you very much.
But and that's where Conchu has that idea where you need to have hero limits, and I get it. I see the validity of it, but me personally, I feel that Blizzard's official stance needs to be there needs to be no hero limit. You can hero stack if it gets the job done, and if it doesn't, well, then it sucks to be you for trying to play a cheese comp against a skilled team. So, I mean, we saw that, like you said, Agents Rising. Team Liquid busted out 5 Tracers and 1 Lucio against an unnamed team and destroyed them. They busted it out against Cloud9 and actually took a match off of them. They tried it against Clutch and got shut down on Nepal. Like, you know, it all depends on the enemy team and if they're able to adapt. And that's, to me, that's where the skill comes in. So, I don't know.
I guess in my head, that's why they're different, is because in my head, it's just like a weird niche strategy as opposed to a cheese. Because in my head, a cheese is a yes or a no thing.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, it'll maybe work. It's either they don't understand and you just win, or they do and they know how to counter it. And it doesn't necessarily feel like that to me. But it is also extremely easy to see why people can feel that way, especially having played against it. Like hero stacking, if it doesn't instantly hit you, like if you can't see the clear way to counter it, sucks. Having 5 Winstons jump on your head with a Lucio behind them and not knowing what to do is a bad time. But on the same note, you know, all of a sudden your team just slams in a bunch of Reapers, and that's a bunch of dead gorillas. You know what I mean? So like, it's one of those things where nobody's wrong. It's really understandable from both angles. It's just Blizzard probably needs to make up their mind officially so teams can start practicing.
Yep.
So, I mean, and we can go back and forth for another couple hours on all these nuances, but, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what makes Overwatch great, is the fact that you can have all of these discussions, and if you feel so inclined, and you're a tournament organizer, you can do hero limits. You can do, you know, specific map pools. I kind of see where ESL is coming from with that, where they're trying to appease Blizzard, because Blizzard has this habit of, well, we're going to release, you know, 850 maps for this game. So they've already done it with Heroes of the Storm. You know, they got rid of 2 maps because they are kind of, quote unquote, the oldest maps, and they released 2 new maps. So to kind of have the map rotation, ESL is probably trying to do that to fall in line with Blizzard. But that's just kind of whatever. I mean, teams kind of prefer to play on payload maps anyways, so, you know, to see how much that'll impact it, we're just going to have to wait for the tournament in Cologne to see if it has any impact. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you could do that with Overwatch, and that's what makes it wonderful.
So the last note on that I would leave is it'd be really interesting if they had ESL with 100K and they had some other sport organization with 100K. See which ones the teams actually go to. Because right now it's blatantly obvious. The teams are going to go where the money is.
Yep.
But if they were given a choice, which type of environment they would want to play in, who would they go to?
Yep.
So, anyways, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it would be interesting to see what the
Definitely
teams.
good food for thought. Like,
Yeah.
But we also saw with the PTR and the patch, you know, the competitive mode did come out. Competitive play did come out. We were also able to see some of the rewards, and unfortunately I don't have a screenshot for that. I thought about it right as I was starting this phone call, but one of them is that you get competitive points for every time you win a game, and wherever you finish at the end of the season, which is currently 3 months, they're doing 2.5 months, which you get 2 weeks in between. Wherever you end up at the end of the season, you get X number of competitive points. You get 1 point per win. You can have golden weapons, and they have no impact whatsoever on your skin. So whatever skin you're wearing, like for example the Arctic May skin where she's got the cool little attachments to her cold gun, it just becomes golden. So you are able to have this golden gun to kind of say, hey, I'm more skilled than you because I got it before you did. So we're able to take a look at that. They cost 300 competitive points, and then they also hinted, and I don't think, unless they're planning on releasing competitive next week, this date is not correct, but it says that Season 1 ends on August 18th. You get a spray, a player icon, which is an animated player icon, and it's Ilios themed, so it's very Greek and Mediterranean. And then you do get those competitive points, which go towards the new golden guns and any future unlocks that they plan to implement later on down the road. They also came out and said general gameplay. People had an issue with Widowmaker's ult not being able to be audible to the enemy team, and sometimes to your team unless you saw the enemy. So now her ult is more audible, so everyone can hear it. the weapons have been added to the hero gallery, so you can go in and look at those golden guns. And now that we have competitive mode on the PTR, we know they're going to cost 300 points. But the other thing that I want to spend a couple minutes on, not a super long time, just because we do have a set amount of time, and I know all of us are hungry. They did remove the prefer avoid player system because people were abusing it. A lot of high-ranking Widowmaker mains were saying, "Well, it's taken me 15 minutes to find a match," and Blizzard's going in and going, "Well, yeah, because anytime this person sees a Widowmaker, they go avoid, avoid, avoid," and it kind of was a system that at the beginning I really saw the benefit to. If there was somebody that was really toxic, I would squelch their chat and I would click avoid, but I wouldn't do it very often. But then little Timmy over here, who just doesn't want to play with Wanzos and Widowmakers, goes, well, yep, avoid, avoid, and then that creates a logjam at the top where people who are just getting avoided by everybody can't queue in. So they said, we're going to do away with that. It's a system we're going to look at later on down the road about tweaking a little bit because it's just being abused. What are your guys' thoughts on the removal of that system? Is it good or bad, or are you indifferent?
I would have
I
loved
think it's good.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Just because, yeah, it does seem, it sucks. So the Widowmaker's experience was that he just had super long queues, which is never fun. So, I mean, I don't know if they could have solved it another way without taking it out completely, but probably a good move.
I think it should have its own subsystem that obviously has some brilliant formula behind it, and I don't know the answer to it, but I did like the ability to say, hey, there is a lot of times in the PTR, obviously probably just because it's PTR, that in competitive you got still people who don't talk. Like, I wish I could instantly not have these people. Like, anybody who didn't talk through the whole match, I instantly put on. I avoid. Like, if they didn't talk the entire match in a competitive, I put them on annoy. If they were toxic, I put them on annoy or avoid. So I had a long list of avoids probably on my account, but it was for reasons of, hey, I'm in competitive. I want people who are willing to get on comms, willing to work together, all these things. And I would add them as, I prefer this person. This person was super on call with their points. They were calling out heroes. They were doing all this stuff. This was a great feature that I was really oh, you know what? These are things that were preferred to me. I would like to have the ability to say, hey, I would like to always be matched with these people. If they're waiting in line and I'm waiting in line, I'm going to want to run up to them and say, hey, I'll play with you. Versus, having to force it to, oh, okay, I'm just going to have to make friends with everybody I run across because they actually know how to play the game.
Yeah. And I
For
mean,
me,
it's whatever.
I'm a little indifferent, I guess. Because personally, and this could just be old habits from playing MOBAs, but whenever I see somebody who's toxic, I just squelch them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never hit the avoid because I don't care. If I don't hear them, then they don't bug me at all. I don't give a shit, you know what I mean? So, for me, a squelch and a report was more than enough. So, it's not affecting me in that. And on the same note, even though I have, a pretty good, a competitive need almost to play PvP and like playing against people, I don't actually really like playing with people that much. I'm one of those guys who plays World of Warcraft by myself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I wasn't exactly preferring people all the time either, because most of the time if I'm in a group, it's going to be a full group of people I play with anyways. So, I'm one of the percentage of people who it does not affect at all in the least. All I can say on it is, lol, rest in peace, Widow mains. We still start playing again, right?
Yeah. I mean, we will see if it has much of an impact in the game. I know I'm kind of indifferent just because, I've won games where it's 5v6, and I say that because if that person is toxic and ends up trolling and it bleeds over into their play, you can still win a game. But this is also coming from a tank and support main. I don't play a ton of damage, so I'm able to kind of put a team on my back and say, yeah, just ignore that dude, whatever, squelch him, it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and do this. Stand the song. I can repeat, and it is listen to Can't Stop. We wanted to cover. We had a lot that we wanted to do and not a lot of time to cover it in. So, One Eye, where can people find you at when we are not doing the Guardians?
As always, I'm pretty easy to reach on Twitter. You can find me over at NA1eye. Also, I do things with the group Multitap. That's primarily a retro-focused group, a bunch of different channels. And we do a podcast once a week over there on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Central, 9 Mountain. This week we did a podcast on RPGs, which actually went really well and surprisingly on topic for the show, which doesn't happen a whole lot. So feel free to stop by and see us there as well. Also, my desktop's finally going to be back and repaired by like the middle of this week. So
Yes.
be streaming a lot more with Veritech, and we'll probably be streaming on my own channel as well. So once all that's ironed
Yes.
out, we'll have some more details there.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, and a lot of those multi-tap guys are actually converting over to Overwatch, and we get to play with a ton of them when during the week, and probably play with a couple more tonight after the podcast ends. I will be up all night playing Overwatch, along with Conchu. Where can people find you at when you are not on the Guardians?
Probably online playing Overwatch.
GFE. I always say this, but I do want to start streaming on Twitch soon. Now that I'm finally moved in, but we'll see if it actually happens.
Wish you the best of luck. I myself have kind of been splitting my time between YouTube gaming and Twitch just to see, kind of put the feelers out there. And so, I mean, it's rewarding on either platform. But I encourage you guys to try and find Tifa. She's really short, so look really hard on Twitter. You might not be able to see her at first glance, but GFE_Twitter. And as for myself, I was streaming exclusively on YouTube Gaming. I have since still shifted my focus onto YouTube Gaming, but I also have my Twitch. Some of you are watching it right now on Twitch, and I thank you to those who are tuning in. I thank you to my YouTube Gaming viewers who are also tuning in. You can find me on Twitch at VeritechGG, YouTube Gaming, gaming.youtube.com/VeritechGG, or just regular YouTube at VeritechGG. We are also going to start doing a fan mail system. So if you want to ask questions for us, if you want to yell at Conchu for avoiding everybody and single-handedly causing the system to go away, you can go ahead and do that. You can DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open. That is VeritechGG. Or if you feel so inclined to send me an eloquent email, you can do that at veritechgg@gmail.com. And again, don't forget to watch us, listen to us, do whatever. We stream live every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube Gaming and Twitch. And for those of you who can't watch live, we are on Google Music and iTunes, so go ahead and check that out. Just search for The Guardians. The most recent episode will be uploaded within 24 hours of this live stream ending. For the rest of my co-hosts, I am Veritech, saying we will see you next time, and in the meantime, enjoy your time in Overwatch, and hopefully we will see you on the battlefield.